Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Monir El Azzouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we wanted to help you to learn more about clinical evaluation by providing you experiences. So mainly, you know that we changed from MDD to MDR. So we have also some changes of rules on how to consider some of the elements that are on the medical device regulation. And clinical evaluation is one of the biggest or most difficult topic that we had actually. And after a few months now of working with clinical evaluation reports about discussing with notified bodies, looking at difficulties, etc. So we wanted to make an episode where we will share with you maybe some good practices or things that we learned from it. And I have with me Cesare Magri from Beyond Clinical that will be helping us for that, because we are working also with Cesare for some of the CER, so we have a lot of learnings and a lot of stories maybe to discuss about. So Cesare, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Hello, hi Monir, thank you for hosting me.
Yeah, so nice. As said, so we got now multiple CERs under our belt. So a lot of experience with also notified bodies. I think this is something that can really help. But can you first make an introduction of yourself and maybe on Beyond Clinical, what you are doing exactly?
Yes, so we are a small CRO, clinical research organization that helps with all aspects of the clinical certification of the devices. So not just creating the documentation, but also planning studies, conducting studies, and most especially creating the strategy that allows to bring a product on the market, the clinical strategy.
Great. So it's why, as I said, I'm working with Cesare because it's mainly a good experience for the moment. We have really great work together. So Cesare, as I said, we were having now more and more experience about CERs. So, but before we go through that, after a few months now of MDR in place, after a few months of interaction, you worked before under MDD. Now we work under MDR. Do you have maybe now a list of things that you see that is really a big difference between MDD and MDR for clinical evaluation?
Yes, it did. So the changes actually started to show up well before the introduction of the MDR. I think already mid-2020 we started seeing things are changing, and it was not immediately clear how things were going to change. So it was a very steep learning curve. It was very interesting, and I think it was not just interesting to see how it developed, but it was also interesting to see where it went to, and how I think actually this process will probably indeed improve the quality of the devices on the market. So I think overall I would judge it as a positive change, but it was challenging, and it is still challenging for many medical devices. So the story we can summarize is that actually there's a lot of change, but formally nothing had changed. So the rules that define the clinical evaluation of today, they were out there since 2016 already. So that was the moment where manufacturers starting feeling the pressure of this clinical evaluation report and started rearranging things. But these rules were not really implemented until, let's say, the beginning of 2021. And the real turning point was the presence of the reviewers at the notified body. So the presence of the clinical reviewers that really make a difference, in the sense that they started reviewing the clinical documentation with new eyes. Okay, so it was a different way of review, and their eyes were those of science, let's say. So it went from a formal process to a process of substance, in which you really have to numbers and with data all your assertions, and probably also the main sentence from the MDR also that had an impact was the one on the definition of clinical data, that clearly stated that clinical data is data from the device or from an equivalent device. So these two steps were really important. And at the moment, at the beginning, there was a moment of feeling lost. So where are we going here? Because suddenly the rules had changed, and they had changed for all parties involved. No? So for the manufacturers and for the notifying bodies as well. We will review them afterwards, but and a huge delay in that is still ongoing in the review of the clinical evaluation. So clinical evaluation that were submitted, where then one would get the response after 6 months. And in this transition period, 6 months was a lot. So it meant going from MDD rule to MDR rule suddenly. So the documents were becoming obsolete. And but I think we are away from that now. Now, at least concerning CPCR, it's starting to plateau. So the rules are starting to become fixed. I think there's going to be more changes relating to the clinical processes in this year and next year. But concerning the structure of the clinical evaluation, I think these processes are starting to crystallize.
So we have the
funding from all the parties.
Yeah, we have the MedDev, if I can say that, is still, if I can say, the Bible, Bible for the creation. And when you read the MedDev, it's really complete. You have maybe to change inside some of the essential requirements to move them to GSPR, or you have to change some of the references to 9342EC. But the content is really clear. Plus, we have also some MDCG guidance now that are explaining about equivalent devices, how you can make things that are equivalent also. So there is more, if I can say, higher level. As you said, a lot of things were already existing before. It's just that there is better reviewer or people that are really checking documentation now and are helping for doing that. But it's really, I mean, for me, the difficulty is really to discuss with a reviewer and convince him, because mainly we have a lot of, also the manufacturers that we are representing, they have a lot of expertise about their device. And the point is to have a discussion with the notified body to say what we provide to you is good, is excellent. And this is where we have this kind of discussion that can go good or bad, or can be a problem here. So you have always, in your experience now with notified bodies, do you have always some discussion about CR, or you have some CR that always pass and it's fine? So there is maybe one or two that have some difficulties.
It doesn't need always to be discussions. There are sometimes points to be clarified, but I think now that we're starting to really get a grip on the structure, on the concepts, we are also more able already to inform the clients, look, you are in a good position or you are in a bad position. So, and to explain what is the open risk of the clinical evaluation. But before we get on the specific example, so what I want to say is that this new way of using the rules, and especially this new rule of the MDR concerning what is a clinical data, they have introduced a core difference, not just two documents. Okay, they are. It used to be the manufacturer were developing their products, getting to the end, close before the certification, they were thinking, oh, I need these two documents for the technical documentation. Let me help creating that. And this has changed completely now. The clinical evaluation is a process that really spans the whole time life of the device, from when you start conceiving the intended purpose, practically to the device hand. And I think this is the thing that the manufacturers have to keep in mind. If you think about the history of the regulatory affair for medical devices, so it started with the regulators really norming the technical part of the development. So manufacturers, also there, 20, 30 years ago, there used to be no documentation concerning hardware, software, and so on. Okay, but step by step, they forced the creation of this documentation, and it's now given that you start planning your hardware and software at the very beginning, because if you wait at the very least, you're just not going to get the software that you want. And the same thing is now with the clinical process. So the thing, you have to start planning your clinical process at the beginning in order to be able at the end to have the correct through a certification. And I cannot stress this enough. It's not just enough anymore to just say, please create me a document. It's about talking from the beginning about this process and making clarity, because I think that's the main problem also that was often open with reviewers. There was no clarity, but often I must say from the manufacturer side. So an ability to well define the indication of a device, inability to clearly define the medical claim of a device. When the reviewers were complaining that they could not understand, they were actually right. This information was often presented in a complete blurred or very generic way that could not be pinned down in terms of clinical evidence. And so the first reaction was probably on these points, and it was 3 rules: give me clear indication, give me clear claims, and give me clinical data that reflects this 2 first point. Okay, and this is not easy to do, because it requires lots of background in the medical field, and then also obviously to have the data, and it requires making clarity. The problem is that the clinical information at many manufacturers was like lying in the air. I would say everyone would know about it, would have an idea of what the indication were, but it was never really structured formally and in a very systematic and consistent way. And this is where what the problem was. So these documents were reflecting this lack of clarity, and then the problem is that for the reviewer it would be also very hard to understand what they had to pinpoint. So what is the population here? So for which data should I look for data?
Yeah.
And so that was the first difficulty. And the second difficulty, obviously, to find clinical data. Although for many clinical devices, there are often loads of publication on the field that's where you can see that this device has been used. And they provide also data concerning clinical outcomes. For some manufacturers, it was hard to really find data concerning their device, and this means collecting data with the device itself. I think that another huge problem was also maybe a psychological problem from the manufacturer side. So the fear of this clinical process, I think it was gigantic. So while, let's say, every manufacturer that does hardware, they know that they have to apply the 6061. They know that they will have to undergo the electromagnetic tests and so on. And they are prepared to this. And while they are not prepared to this idea, I will have also to confront the use of the device on the field with my data. And since they might not know exactly what does it mean now doing collecting this data, doing the study, sometimes I have the feeling that they fear the process more than it actually it is hard.
Well, obviously, it's easier than what they. I mean, it's not easier. It's really structured, so we already know about it, and it's just that as they don't know, it's more about will it cost me a lot of money? Will it cost me a lot of time? Will there a risk that maybe I will fail with their risk? I mean, I think it's all those questions that they are having, and you need to answer.
Yes, but the point is, imagine that you never consider the electromagnetic compatibility of your device until the very end. Obviously, it's going to be a gigantic problem. Yeah, but if you plan and develop for it from the beginning, usually it becomes something addressable. Maybe you will have to put some ferrite somewhere to reduce the interference, but it becomes addressable. While if you do it at the end, it's over. You have to redesign the device. And it's the same exact thing with the clinical aspects of the device. If you wait till the end and suddenly you have this block, oh, now I have to test my device, it becomes expensive, complicated, you have to redo things, you delay things a lot. But if you plan from the very beginning, it's a very addressable process that I would compare it somehow to the electrical norms somehow
as you said, planning is mainly the key here is to not wait. I mean, it's the same as what we are when we are saying that when should you call a regulatory affairs person or work with this person. It's from the beginning. It's not waiting that you have designed the products and at the end, oh, here is the products. Can you please now register that on the market? And then you start to say, oh, do you have that? Do you have that? Do you have that? No, I don't have. Oh, then you have the problem. So here is the same. So from the beginning, already have a clinical evaluation or clinical strategy. And then, you know already what is needed or which question you have to answer all along the way before you arrive to this clinical evaluation.
The other thing that I've noticed is that when the manufacturer devote this time to make this clinical clarity, they also get a lot back concerning the knowledge of their own devices. I think it's really surprising to see if one helps them making clarity on what are the indication, what is the data, what are the outcomes, what are the known adverse events on the field. You really have like haha moments where they say, oh, wow, okay, now this makes sense, and now I know also to address how to address in the PMS or in the risk management. It gives something back apart from also the marketing potential. Also, having just collected some good data that show that your device work. I mean, that's something that the manufacturers put on the front page of their website saying, look, these are our outcomes. No? And as I said, it's nothing impossible to be thought of. And I noticed that there is more and more awareness. We support like a bootcamp for startups. And this was like last year, nobody knew about clinical evaluation details. This year, they were all aware that they would have to collect some sort of data with their devices. They didn't know exactly how to do it, but there was this awareness, and
there is less fear, if I can say, less fear to do that because they already know about all that. Okay, so now in terms of creation of a clinical evaluation, as we said, we have maybe, as we said, to start from the beginning to have a strategy and to define that. When we are now collecting the data, how long it takes to create a clinical evaluation report, plan, etc. So what is kind of a timeline approximately to create this kind of documentation?
Okay, so the thing is, the structure should be, you have a first draft of your intended purpose, really the bare minimum conception of the device that you want to work, and you start working on the state of the art. Okay, that's so the state of the art. It's sometimes thought of as well, I just need to write like a Wikipedia page on the disease of my that I want to address, something like this, and that's it. And that's absolutely not it. That's probably one of the biggest parts of the clinical evaluation nowadays, and it requires addressing very specific information. So, what are the outcomes that are standard language in which the doctor in this field speak about the performance and the safety of a certain therapy? What are the benchmark devices I should compare myself to? What are the different techniques, and what are the numbers that show that my technique is still acceptable, and so on? So it's a time-consuming process that, however, returns a lot of information. So that's, in theory, one could really think, I start conceiving my device, I create the state of the art. It could be an independent document, it could be part of the CEP, and it's already a big part of the entire work, I would say. And once you have the document, then you have all the information that you need to start to understand which data I need for my device, either as a clinical evaluation or as a clinical investigation, or as data, looking for data in the literature. That's really the first step. And once you have the state of the art and you have the data, actually, then wrapping together the CR, it's probably not the most time-consuming part. You might have to do some analysis and so on, but it's this whole planning part and understanding the field, understanding how the field speaks and how the doctors there work. It's a very time-consuming part, and this needs to be done really, really at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, we have, as I've said, I worked with you for multiple CERs. And lastly, we use this kind of methodology with one of our customers. And I saw really that it helped a lot, even the customer at the end, to understand the strategy, because this helped to define the next strategy for the CER, define where we should go on that way, to also anticipate maybe some questions, some issues that we can have to deal with, and then to discuss directly with the customer about the strategy and where we go. So I think for me, yeah, working with the state of the art was eye-opening, if I can say, oh yes, by doing this, we already gather information that we say we should go in that direction or that direction, because we have not enough data here, so let's go in that direction because here we have some data, so it gives some hints also. And yeah, as you said, it's also time consuming. It's not just a Wikipedia search, as you are saying. It was really a lot of work, and but I really understand that.
So I think really people have to think that the state of the art means doing systematic review with meta-analysis, essentially. So it's a time-consuming process. It's really not just a summary with a few data. It's creating systematic review meta-analysis. One can download the Cochrane book on systematic reviews. That's essentially the process. Okay. Obviously, the more you do, the faster you get. But that's the concept of doing it. And by reading the book, you will see that it's a time-consuming work. But it's a very well invested work, because once you have a grip on that part, then you have a grip on the clinical evaluation of your device. You will understand what is possible, what is not possible, which claim I should delete because I will never be able to demonstrate, and which claims instead I can really show with my device. It's really, so I cannot stress how much important that is.
Yeah, but would you say that this is also the most difficult part of a CER?
Yes, it's a difficult part because it requires lots of competencies. So that's also something sometimes I struggle to explain this. So also the idea of the CER done by one person, one employee, just like this, I think it's over. It really requires lots of competencies. You need to involve doctors, you need to involve people with a background in statistics, and so that's also something a bit hard sometimes to accept, because it's hard to find an employee that's just gonna do it all, and in the proper way. It's a very it requires lots of different aspects. So and it requires also being able to discuss with people that understand the terminology, the way of doing things. So.
No, I think it's a team that has to work, and it's what I'm saying always. Even so, we are doing some trainings like a green belt training, and when we arrive to the clinical part, we explain, you cannot do it with one person. I mean, unless you find really we call the magic chip or the licorna, or somebody that is really skilled on everything and is really can be proving that. But normally it's a team of people with different levels, different skills, different knowledge, and it's also better to have a team so that you can confront ideas and also get a better solution at the end. One question that I had for you. So you know that MDCG they have issued this clinical evaluation report assessment tool. So this is mainly the template that is used by notified bodies to assess that your CER is working fine, etc. So are you using that also for verifying that your CER is matching with the requirements, or it's really not a tool that is really helpful, or I mean for the creation of a CER?
So definitely it is like let's say the template for the checking from the notified body. So you have to have it in mind. We also obviously took it and went step by step to see if we forgot anything, or if we had something that we didn't include in our CRs. That's definitely the case. I don't think it can one can use it for creating a CR. It's the structure. It's not suited for that, but it needs. Once you have done the CR, you can go through it and check. Okay, this I have. This I have. As I said, I think that if one now follows the standard process with the creation of the state of the art, all these outcomes that are required, and then the collection of the data, implicitly you will have already addressed most of these MDCG templates, because it automatically you will have to answer some question on your own. Otherwise, you cannot proceed.
Okay.
So keep it in mind, but it's not a solution.
I understand. In terms of notified bodies, so as we said, we have also now a shift in terms of the expertise in terms of notified bodies and questions and relation on that. So can you maybe share with us some of the discussion that you had with them where there was some or misunderstanding or some argumentation, or where you have really to convince? So is there like a pattern where on this point there is always some argumentation or some discussion on that, or on this point they are really looking for this or for that? So is this something that we can share with the people here?
Yeah. So the first thing is, first of all, in this process, both sides are learning. So the manufacturers are learning, and the notified bodies are learning. So one should not also expect that they have always the right answer or the solution to something, because some aspects at that point, if they are not clear to you, they might also not be clear or not be well established yet also for the notified body. So everyone is learning, and I think they are willing to have some degree of flexibility. So there was a moment of there was an issue in which this MDD CR was still handed in and then being reviewed as MDR practically, or so on. That was probably a moment of conflict, because the two things were really not passing together. However, I have to say that sometimes we also got irritated from this lack of understanding from the two sides. But I have to say that overall we learned a lot from the notified body, and they were sometimes a step ahead in the process. So I think the process for the clinical evaluation for the medical devices has been very much molded on the one for the pharmaceuticals. Okay. So the templates come from there with the pros and cons of it. So the pros are that it was a well-structured process, quite complicated, but the cons are that many medical devices are not therapeutic, or are, if they've been on the market for ages and nobody has cared about this process. Or for many medical devices, you also cannot really pin down a specific indication so easily. Some are very broad range, while usually the medication, they target a specific disease and they have a very therapeutic goal. So that was probably the point where there was more conflict also with notified body, because we were telling you, look, this is what you are requesting me now to define one MDCG code, ICT code for my device, and when it's take a thermometer, it's when it's completely generic. Here we're not speaking the same language, right? I understand, and the problem is that they had to also tick their boxes, indication data, and they internally maybe also didn't have the solution on how to address this problem. But I think that now with 1 year, 1.5 years through, they are starting to they have understood that, and they are starting also to find a solution for that. Okay. So I think especially now there is more room to discuss certain things and certain specific type of problematic devices that don't fit in this classical indication therapy pattern for which the whole process was designed initially. Okay. So that I think there's been lots of progress, and also if you listen to the webinars of the notified body or you speak to them during for the reviews, you will start seeing that for some stuff they are really starting to see things a bit different and approving solution that maybe years ago, when they were also starting with their hard checklist, they might not have accepted, or they didn't know how to frame it. So I think there is a bit. It looks good. So good.
I think the idea here is, as you've said, I think it's the key thing is there is a learning from both sides. And what happened maybe 1 year ago is now maybe smoother. So it's always the same. So we have a new regulation. So we try to be harder because there is a new regulation, and then we get smoother because we have a better understanding of each
yes,
of
they've learned a lot. We have learned a lot. Manufacturers have learned a lot. So I think, and it's starting to get in a good position concerning clinical evaluation. This doesn't mean that it's over. I think there are several points that are still not really being touched at the moment that will become the subject of the next years. For example, the whole relationship between clinical evaluation and risk management, which at the moment is just briefly reviewed or mentioned, or the relationship between with PMS and so on. It's gonna be it's going to intensify a lot in the next year. I think this is going to be the topic of this year, and maybe longer if depends on how fast they want to implement this. Since they've been now also complaining from manufacturers concerning MDR, it might be that they do it a bit slower than, for example, with the issue of the CR. But I think that especially with the PSUR, there's going to be a new step in which processes that at the moment were being treated completely separately from the clinical evaluation, they will be much more connected to the CR and CP and to the whole clinical evaluation process. I think we're going to see a change in the way risk management is done.
Okay, so it's not real links, some links between all the different systems which are operating separately, but if there is a trigger on one that can involve the another one, etc. So I think
right now they're keeping really the check level at the minimum concerning that. So it's still a formal check. I think that it's gonna evolve into making it clinically meaningful. So now let's reanalyze your clinical evaluation from the point of view of the clinical data that you collected for the state of the art and for your device. What does it really mean? And we see it starting now already with the bigger manufacturers, and they are already thinking about it. But I think it's going to be the topic of this year, and it's going to change quite consistently the way risk management is being done.
I understand that. So is there also, now that we talk about notified bodies, was there also some surprises from your side when we go now to manufacturers and we tell them, now we have to do this, now we have to do that, and maybe it will take more time, so the price will be higher or will be increased, etc. So was there also some surprises or some misunderstanding from their side?
So from the notified body or from
the manufacturers? When you go to manufacturers and that are coming to you and say, now we have to do, they ask you to do the CER for them. And then when you tell them how much time is needed, what is needed, etc. And if they have an experience with MDD and MDR, they see, but it's too much, or it's not the same budget, or it's not the same thing. So are they understanding, or is there any misunderstanding here?
No, I mean it's still ongoing. I think we are still we're still seeing it. So I think the big manufacturer, the problem they've been hit the faster because maybe they have more products, that get constantly reviewed, and the hardest for notified bodies. So they already adapt in this new thinking, but especially the small medium one, some either they are not yet in the new cycle or don't know the new process already. Some still ask like, how is this possible? Why are you asking me to do this? And last time you didn't ask for the same thing. What's happening here? And it's we try to explain, but sometimes it's not so easy. Honestly, there were also situations where I wish I had been harder and and said, no, you now go and collect data with this device because it's not going to work, and then it doesn't work. And so if there are retrospectively there are some situations like 1 year and a half ago where I thought, okay, actually I should have even been harder and force the customer to collect data because
because they try to avoid it anyway. They try to avoid to use their device because it costs also some money. If they can use already what is existing on the market for them, it's better, and it's mainly what is they are thinking. But now, as you've said, going to collect data on your device will be the must, if I can say, and PMCF will also be something more and more used to collect those data also in the future. So there is a lot of ways where you will have to do that, but most likely this is something that a lot of notified bodies will look at, like collection of real data for the devices, because there is still this question about equivalent devices. Each time we have a CER, we use equivalent devices, there is also a lot of discussion with notified bodies about equivalent device. Is it really an equivalent device? Should we use that, etc.? So it's also something that is
not only that, but a big change with MDD consisting equivalence is that before you were just declaring equivalence and that was it. Now you are declaring equivalence, and then you have to start collecting data from the equivalent device, and that's a big change. That means it's not enough to look at to find a device where you say I'm equivalent. You have to find a device for that is equivalent and for which we have access to the clinical data. So that you really have to start doing the process that you would do on your device for the competitor device. So it makes it much harder. Not only, and after you did this process, you have to throw everything away.
Yeah.
Now, let's say just to say like this, and then you have to start collecting your data in post-market clinical follow-up, which is easier, but it's not necessarily so much easier than even doing it preclinically. So sometimes I wonder whether this will effort to avoid the collection of data with the device itself, it's worth it, because it may delay a bit the pain, but at a certain point it's gonna come, and so it's very hard nowadays to get through without any type of clinical data, unless it really makes sense for the device. I mean, there are devices for which it really makes sense not to collect clinical data directly with this device, and I think notified bodies are willing to accept that. But it's one has to think it's not anymore a matter of formality or of convincing someone. It's really a matter of being reasonable based on your device, what it does, what its risk class is, and what the patient population is. So think, if I were to be the patient, what would I have liked the manufacturer to have done in order to assess that this device is safe and performing? And that will give you probably the correct answer for your device. I think.
I think it's good. So thank you for that. I think, I hope, this clarifies a lot of things for our audience here in terms of clinical evaluation, how to approach that, and how maybe to get some good practices on doing that. So as I said, I'm working with you on some CERs. If people want to work with you, so what can you offer, if I can say, as a service, what can you offer for the customers that are maybe interested to get some clinical evaluation or work with you?
We cover practically anything that you will need clinically for the certification and for the lifetime of your device. I would say every possible aspect. The best thing is to contact us at the very beginning, so that one can start discussing the strategy, and because this might even influence the way you develop your device really physically, or the software. So it's the best thing is to start talking about it, and that will also save the most time and the most money possible. If it's already a project which is ongoing and so on, one tries to do the best with what is there, and one tries to find a solution. So they can contact also us at any time. And also for post-market clinical follow-up studies and planning, or surveys and patient surveys. This is called rank 4 MDCG 06. No? So that's also an option. They can also contact us.
Great. Anyway, I will place your contact details and LinkedIn profile also on the show notes. So don't hesitate to go there. As I said, I'm working with Cesare, so he's really a great professional. So don't hesitate if you have any projects on clinical for him. I mean, I guarantee that you will have a satisfaction with him. So great. So Cesare, really thank you for your help. Thank you for also sharing with us your experience and knowledge. I think it's really valuable, and I hope this will help a lot of professionals that are creating clinical evaluation report. And then, let's see in future if there is maybe other learning that we can get from the next projects, and then we can again share that with the people here. Okay, so Cesare, thank you very much, and I wish you a nice day.
Thank you, Monir. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day too. Bye-bye.